Welcome to the Give Back Lab. I'm your host, Daniela DiGrandi. You've entered a space where bold voices, real stories, and unfiltered conversations come to life. Here in the lab, we're breaking bias, shifting thinking, and exploring the power of giving back through truth, vulnerability, and diverse perspectives. We celebrate diversity of thought and everything beautiful that makes us human. This isn't just talk, it's real, it's raw, and it's exactly the kind of space we need. We're unlearning, relearning, and evolving together. Let's dive in. Hello, thank you for joining us today on the Give Back Lab. Today, I am honored to be joined by Micheal Fleischner, who is the founder of Big Fin CEO. Micheal, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Daniela. Good to see you.
It's great. It's great to have you here. I'd love to, for our listeners, learn a little bit about who you are and what your journey's been, and then we can just dive right in.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I'd love to share. And, my journey has been a really interesting one. And I say that because I really grew up with this desire to get into marketing and advertising. And at the time, there were only so many options. Either you could work for one of the big agencies in New York, or you could work client side, work for a company that had a marketing function. And I tried to go the advertising route. Didn't really work out. So I did what most people do when their first job doesn't work out. I went to grad school, gave me some time, gave me some experience. And then I started working in corporate America. And I did that for many years. And, I won't go into all the intimate details of my career, but it gave me an opportunity to really cut my teeth on marketing and to do it in a pretty big way, large budgets, everything from commercials down to, sales support, whatever it happened to be. And I got a really broad experience, which was great. But one day when I was in my late 30s, early 40s, I kind of woke up feeling really unfulfilled. And
Mm,
so there has to be something more. So it took me a while to really build the confidence to go out on my own. But I always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit, especially when I reflected back on that and thinking about some of the things I'd done in college and grad school and so on and so forth. So eventually I started my own business. I started a consultancy, ran that for a few years, actually had a small exit. And then I went back into corporate as a consultant, and I
mm.
did that for like another 3 or 4 years and then realized like, no, I thought corporate marketing was the way to go once. It didn't work out twice, didn't really work out. So ever since then, I kind of left, started my entrepreneurial career. And today I run Big Fin SEO. I also own other businesses. I invest in everything from whiskey to crypto mining. So I
Awesome.
really have this uh, desire, I think, for variety, which is really important to me. And I'm curious. I'm curious about how things work. I'm a tinkerer, and that has led me down the path of all of these different things. And I feel that for me, it has helped me grow personally as well as professionally. And that's really what keeps me fulfilled and curious and happy doing what I'm doing.
I love that. I love when I have conversations around the pivot, right? Because we all go to college and you have this master plan in your
Mm,
mind at that point of what you think your life will look like. And
mhm.
then sometimes, when boots on the ground, it doesn't look so pretty or it's not exactly what you envisioned it to be. And I love that you were able to make that pivot because so many people just say, well, I made a wrong choice and this is where I'm at and I'm stuck, right? And they find themselves in this stuck position and they stunt their growth.
Yeah.
So I love the
Yeah.
fact that, your late 30s, early 40s, you're making that pivot, right? And let's talk about that a little bit, right? Because that's got to be a little bit scary, you know. I don't know, married children at that age, right? There's a lot of things happening in your life, generally speaking,
Yes.
right? So what did that feel like to kind of come to that realization and make that pivot? Was there something that pushed you over the edge, so to say?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me kind of frame it from the perspective of what was going on in my life at the time. I was working from the outside in. It looked amazing. I was making a lot of money. I traveled a lot. I was involved in, I had a seat at the table, so to speak. Um, Part of a large corporation that gave me exposure to a lot of amazing people. Like everything looked like it was great. But the reality, right behind the closed door, I was depressed. I was unhappy. I was developing anxiety just because, I'm in these rooms with all these big shots. Everything's high pressure. It wasn't a good situation. So I knew that something had to change. But I feel like at the time I was young and naive and I really doubted myself. I didn't think
Mm,
I could go out on my own. And I think there were ideas of what I thought that meant going out on your own. And I had to do a lot of inner work to really get to the point where I could say, you know what, I could see myself making it, doing my own thing. And at that time, which I still operate by, whether I read it somewhere or heard it, I adopted this idea of crawl, walk, run.
mm,
And for me, like I'm a perfectionist. I've gotten better over decades, not trying to be perfect at everything I do, but being present with everything I do. And because of that perfectionism, it felt like all or nothing, right? Like
right.
either I was going to win big or I was going to fail in a big way and I was going to let down my family. At the time, I had two young children. Now they're all grown up. But you're supporting the family or kind of contributing to that and thinking about the future, my retirement savings, college educations, all of these things. And I thought it was irresponsible of me to say, you know what, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start this thing over here. So with this philosophy of crawl, walk, run, I said, well, you know what? Maybe I don't need to quit my job. Maybe I could see if I could do some consulting on the side. Maybe I could help someone with their website or write a white paper for someone or do some market read, whatever it was at the time.
Right.
And that's essentially how I started, Daniela. Like I did
Um,
not, I mean, some people are like, they're 99 on the risk tolerance scale. I was a one. And I'm like, there's just no way, right? There's no way. So I said, all right, what is something I can do in addition to what I'm doing now? Not in
right.
so that can help me build confidence, give me experience, give me an idea of what it might be like if I were out on my own. And to be totally transparent to you and your listeners, I did it twice, right? I kind of stepped out once, did it for a few months, didn't really work out. I just couldn't handle the pressure. So I stepped back into corporate and corporate marketing. But circumstances kind of aligned for me to give it a second go a few years later. And ultimately, that's what it took to make that decision because there were acquisitions happening and a bunch of seats moving on the bus, and it just made sense for me at the time to kind of leave this job that I was not. It's not that I hated the job. Again, I liked what I was doing, but I was not fulfilled. I was
Right.
bored. I just really didn't find it challenging. I started to deal with all the politics of I wanted to go one direction, but others wanted to go in a different direction, and that was not where I wanted to be. So I started kind of with these side projects, and one led to another. And, it's like you're a lot of people are concerned when they start their own business, like, where's the work going to come from? And I had a very different philosophy, which was I'm going to focus on what's on my plate and I will never go hungry. And that has worked now for almost 20 years, which is I'm not always chasing the next thing in business. I'm not trying
Mm,
to create a pipeline with hundreds of potential customers. The agency, we focus on delivering exceptional customer service, delivering on what we say we're going to deliver on, and we have more than enough work to go around. So, um, those are all things I kind of learned early in that transition that got me in the headspace to mentally move. And
right.
again, it wasn't an all or nothing thing. It was like, what are some small actions I can take today that'll get me moving in the direction that ultimately I want to get to. And honestly, that's made all the difference because it took all the pressure off. It helped relieve the anxiety. I was actually able to enjoy the work that I was doing. And I think I wouldn't change anything when I think back about that process because otherwise I'd still be in corporate and I would probably not be very happy today.
Right. And that happens a lot. And I'm excited and so happy for you that you found this ability to find balance, right? Because it is a balance. And I think that sometimes what drives so let's talk about an entrepreneurial spirit, right?
Mhm.
So an entrepreneurial spirit, you have that drive, that, passion for whatever that product is that you're delivering, that service. And in order to there's you talk about the pipeline, I think that there's a very fine line between the drive that it takes to deliver the entrepreneurial good that you're delivering, right? Whatever that may be, but also that drive can leak into that pipeline, and I agree with you where that pressure to build that pipeline because you're so passionate about the good you're delivering,
Yeah.
whatever that is, um, you can lose sight of things, right? So how did you find that balance? Did you ever find yourself chasing that pipeline and trying to fill it?
Mhm.
I mean, at what point? Maybe that happened in that first go around, right? And then the
Yeah.
second go around, we take our lessons learned. I don't know. I don't want to put words
Yeah.
in your mouth,
Dust
but where
yourself
did that?
off.
Yeah, where did that happen?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, pipeline's an interesting conversation, and obviously we could talk about that for an hour. I I like to believe that our philosophy in this business is different than most. So a lot of people are trying to grow fast, they're trying to scale, and they want to sell their business. I love our business. I want to be working in this business as long as I possibly can. Of course, I want to create value, but I if we find a potential client who has a need, we do our best to make it work. And again, a lot of agencies, a lot of clients say, look, unless you've got a budget of $10,000 a month, we're not going to work with you. And that's
Right,
fine for them. But if we have a client who comes to us with 5,000 a month and we can make it work, meaning that they're getting, value and we're making money, we'll do it for $5,000 a month. Now, what they're getting obviously is different than the $10,000 a month client. But because of that, I don't feel this need to churn and burn. I don't need to focus all my energy and marketing dollars on generating quote unquote qualified leads. I need to focus those dollars on building our brand, on positioning ourselves in front of the right types of clients. And then ultimately we make it work based on their needs. And as you know, with marketing, there's so many different aspects to marketing. It's not just about getting a customer in a door. It's
right,
building pipelines, it's building workflows, it's creating funnels, landing pages, websites, SEO, paid search, PR. There's so many things that clients need that oftentimes what does happen is we focus on one aspect of the client need, we produce results, and now they're in a position to add additional services and so on and so forth.
right.
And again, that's always been the philosophy. So yeah, there's definitely a fine line. And I think that one mistake that people do make when they go out on their own is they sell themselves short. So
Mm,
what I'm not advocating here is that you take any business at any price. Like that's not what we're talking about here. It is saying, look, I'm going to offer X service and I can't charge any less than something.
right.
Um, but I can offer a lot of different services at different price points to meet different needs.
Right. And I love that because you end up building true relationships, right? That are
Mm,
based in trust with your clients. And so they may be operating at a point right now where their budget is 5,000 or 3,000, whatever it is, but
mhm.
that doesn't mean that their business isn't on a growth trajectory that may change that, and next year it may be 20,000, right? We don't know.
Absolutely.
And so when we operate in service of
Hmm.
others and we contribute to that journey that they are also on, not only do we help to build a strong relationship that's rooted in trust and camaraderie and partnership and truly helping, right?
Hmm.
but we're also contributing. We're
Excellent.
giving back, right? I mean,
Hmm.
as part of the Give Back Lab, right? It's why you're here, because you're a
Yeah.
tremendous individual that does give back so much, in your culture and the way that you run your organization, and the way that you do things. And I love that. Let's talk about marketing for a little bit and AI, right?
Hmm.
So AI has come into play, and a lot of companies are cutting marketing teams and customer service teams and all of those teams that they can create an agent for, right?
Hmm.
How do you see this happening? And how is it affecting you and your business today?
Yeah, those are really great questions because we are in the midst of a significant change, but no one has it figured out. And I
Mhm.
say that, and I'll kind of drill down into a specific area. So with Big Fin SEO, one of the challenges we're up against is that people are starting to use ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude to do their searches. They're not just going to Google anymore. Google has an AI overview, which they've been experimenting with for a while. This is really nothing new. But in these different areas, we have to figure that out, right? As a service to our clients, if they want to
Right.
get ranked in ChatGPT, they're going to come to businesses like ours to figure out how to get that done. So, as part of that process over the last 6 months, we've been looking to acquire a company that we could fold into our service offering that offers specifically around LLM optimization to get, brands and clients showing up. And in speaking with all of these founders, it became pretty apparent to me that no one has the full picture. I shouldn't say picture, really the full process figured out because the process is really twofold. One is seeing where you rank as a brand in, let's say, ChatGPT or Claude. So if I type in your name or I type in the company's brand name or affiliated brands, what are the queries people are typing in, number one, and where do you show up for those queries, if you show up at all? That's only half the equation. And there are a lot of companies out there now that are doing that, as well as some of the enterprise level tools that have existed for a while. And now they have that feature. But the second part, which is really where my organization has focused over the last 6 to 8 years, is the remediation. Okay, I know you're not ranking here, or maybe you're ranking at the bottom of the first page. How do I get you to the top? And no one's quite sure how to do that just yet.
Mhm.
We're starting to see early signs of that in terms of third party references. They call them citations, content that mentions you, so on and so forth. So there are ranking protocols, if you will, that would take people through. But new things are emerging every day in terms of tactically, what are you doing on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis around your brand, your content, other assets that you own to actually get you ranking in these things. So I use that really as a model when I think about AI and marketing on a broader scale, which is people have partial solutions to things, but nobody
Mhm.
has it completely figured out. And I don't know that they will, because even once they do, these LLMs continue to evolve and change
Right.
and self correct. So I feel that it's one of those things that you have to be in it to be able to speak about it intelligently. Uh, but there are going to be a lot of people who can speak to certain aspects of AI, but no one has the answer when it comes to AI marketing because it's just multifaceted. And even the large players, like think about your CRMs, like or marketing automation, like Marketo or HubSpot, these brands that people know, sure, they have AI features, but have they figured out AI and how to truly make it work? Which to me means you press a button and it overperforms. No, it's
Right.
just not there yet. Will it ever get there? I don't know. I feel like it's the law of diminishing returns, right? It's that curve that it's like going up like this, but it kind of levels off and never reaches the top.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, and so I do a lot in the AI space, and I constantly say listen, AI is a technology, right? But it is more than it is a human tool. To
Mm,
me, AI is meant to supplement the human, and what we do, and the data that we feed it will determine how much it can supplement us, right?
mhm,
And in our processes and our work. And of course, things will change because things change. Industrial revolution,
yeah.
to print to digital, things change as we evolve, and it's important to evolve around it. But I have a lot of young people in my network, and I find myself constantly having this conversation with people in business school that are marketing majors, or getting their MBAs right now because they just stay in school. They don't take that break and then go back like we used to in the olden days,
Mhm,
as my kids would say back, when I had a pet dinosaur. You went to school, you did your bachelor's, you went to work, you got some experience, and then at some point you went back or you didn't to graduate school, depending on which direction you wanted to go.
mhm,
Now they're kind of like front loading everything, right? So many universities, institutions offer these 6, 7 year programs, where you just do it in one shot. Um, so I have a lot of conversations with people who are in business school, marketing, finance, wherever it is.
mhm,
And we have the conversation of what is it going to look like when we come out of school, right? We are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for these educations, and
mhm,
we're afraid we're not going to have a job,
mm,
right? What do you think that landscape starts to look like? What kind of skills should they focus on in this evolving space as you see it?
mhm. Well, personally, I think the most valuable skill is curiosity and
Yeah.
doing the work. And, whatever, I mean, what I learned in grad school maybe theoretically still makes sense. But when it comes to actually delivering and doing work, it's evolved so far past certainly the tools that we were using back then that they're not relevant anymore. But
Mhm.
the ability to do abstract thinking and be curious about how to get from here to there is what makes the difference, because then it doesn't matter what tools you specifically use. And I think as an entrepreneur, when I hire people into my organizations, I'm looking for people who have that curiosity and can figure stuff out.
Right.
How they get there, everybody's different. Tools continue to evolve. As you know, there's so many options. Like we've talked about this with enterprise level solutions. Um, the enterprise level solution within an organization that's been embedded for years may still be the answer, but the mechanisms by which they get from where they are currently to where they need to be have all changed, and they will continue to change. And I think and you mentioned the idea of change in general, right? That's the one constant. And I think if you can either embrace that and really work with it and say, I'm going to learn and I'm going to continually learn, or you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to ignore that. It's like my dad, who's an older guy at this point, he can answer the phone barely, but he's not scrolling on TikTok. Like,
Right.
because he made a conscious decision at some point, although my stepmom is. She's as techy as they come, but that's a choice, right? So
Right.
I think that ability, that skill, the curiosity to continually learn is the most important aspect of someone's ability to succeed in today's, especially marketing environment. And if it takes them going through a 2-year program in grad school to build that curiosity, albeit expensive, it's worth it. If they can get there on their own, maybe they don't need to do that. So, and I'm
Right.
not advocating, getting that advanced education or even a college education versus not. I'm just saying that I think today the core skills people need to be successful aren't memorizing stuff out of a textbook.
Right. No, and I agree, right? I love that curiosity piece because I think curiosity is what drives the hunger for knowledge and understanding. And then that is, it compounds, right? And
Mhm,
so it grows. And as that grows, you find yourself moving along the evolution journey with it
mhm,
rather than this is my job and these are the things I do, and I come to work and I do them every day. And there's nothing that irritates me more as a leader than people that's not my job.
Right.
That is a comment that irritates me,
Yeah.
as a leader, right?
Uh-huh.
For individuals, for people,
Yeah.
because it is that curiosity. Get yourself outside of your comfort zone, assist another department, assist another person in your department, learn a new skill, stretch yourself, constant, be curious.
Mm.
Why do we do it this way? Right? That's the other thing. I encourage people to ask all of the time, why do we do it this way? It doesn't mean that you're being challenged, Mr. or Miss Leader. You're not being challenged when people say, "Why are we doing this way?"
Yeah.
Right? Either they really want to truly understand it, or they may have some different view on it that gives you another way to do it that may be so much better, right?
Mm.
Um, if if we don't invite curiosity, celebrate curiosity, encourage it, and expect it,
Mhm.
it won't be there. And so then we become very stagnant and stale. And the data that's going into these systems that ultimately feeds AI
Mhm.
becomes very stagnant and stale, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
AI is really only ever as good as whatever the data is that it is absorbing, because it can't make independent thoughts.
Mhm.
It can make connective assumptions by
Mhm.
connecting, well, this is close enough to this and this is close enough to that, which is how we get what, people call hallucinations.
Yeah.
Well, it's just because it's trying to make connections. But if you don't correct the hallucination and you let it go and you say, "Oh, forget it, that ChatGPT is hallucinating crazy things," and you don't tell it, "You're wrong, this is
It's never
wrong,"
gonna get better.
you've just added to the compound of the data, right? So
Mhm.
we as users, I think, are as important to the process of creating and curating and helping to advance this along the evolution. So as much as we take back, we should give, in
Mhm.
that scenario. I have a lot of people that say to me, "Well, it's not my job to program the LLMs for everybody, blah blah blah."
Mm.
Bad thinking, right? Short-sighted thinking, right? These
Mm.
are tools that we're all looking to use. So I love that curiosity bit, because I find myself, I did a little bit of guest lecturing at NYU, School of Engineering, and I had this, and it's top of mind for a lot of students, not just business majors, but I was speaking at the engineering school.
Mm.
Um, and it's top of mind. What is our job gonna look like? Last summer, I did an internship in this space, and
Mhm.
I'm not gonna be able to do it this summer because that job no longer exists.
That's
They
really
have an AI doing it.
Mhm.
So I love what you say about being curious. I also would love to talk about the shift from corporate to entrepreneur and dive into that a little bit,
Mhm.
because I see that happening a lot today in this market. In
Mm.
this job market, a lot of people are being displaced out of their corporate roles, and they are shifting,
Mhm.
maybe through not a direct, decision like yours was, but more
Yeah.
of a necessity.
Sure. Mhm.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about those entrepreneurial scaries and all of the good things. What some advice that you can give our listeners in that space?
Absolutely. And I'm chuckling because necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah,
You know, when your back is against a wall, that's usually when you make things happen.
that's
So,
right.
right. So it's not a good thing, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, I think personally. And, I would say kind of reflecting back on that entire situation, leaving corporate, starting really with nothing. My first client was $500 a month, to ultimately growing multiple businesses and investments and blah, blah, blah. The biggest lesson, I think, was to spend the time focusing on you, not on everything out there, because I really didn't get successful until, as we talked about earlier, I kind of gave myself that crawl, walk, run. I took the pressure off of myself. Now, some people might be saying, "Hey, Michael, that's really easy for you to say. You're in a very different position." Yeah, but I started out where I had no money coming in. I was only making $500 a month. Okay.
Right.
So I challenge anyone to say that my situation is different because it wasn't. And the only way I was able to survive through that was obviously asking for help when and if I needed it. That's number one, and most importantly. But secondly, working on myself and doing what I could to keep a positive mental attitude to
Right.
say, look, it is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it right now, but I'm going to continue to focus and I'm going to continue to make this work regardless of my situation. And over time, it got better and better. And I focused on those things that were working, not the shoulds. Oh, I should be making X every month. This should be easier.
Right.
Shouldn't have to, uh, contact former employees that I worked with to say, hey, if you have any business, I'd love for you to throw it my way. Right. It shouldn't require learning new things because I'm an expert and that's beneath me. Like all those shoulds um, tend to happen, especially when you're forced to be in a situation that you're unfamiliar with. And
Right.
look, I'm not saying it was all rosy. I had many sleepless nights, I will admit. Um, and it took me a while to get there, but it can happen a lot faster if you are in a state of non-resistance. If you're
Mm,
not pushing and pushing and pushing and driving yourself nuts, right? All you're doing is creating um, cognitive dissonance in your own mind and body, and you're going to be miserable. As opposed to saying, "Look, I am where I am right now, and I'm doing the best I can to make it work," and just pushing forward in that mindset. So again, I know this is kind of a circuitous route to come back to really the advice, but the advice is be kind to yourself. Like give yourself time and space to make things work. Because typically, right? You're your own worst enemy. You probably don't have people standing over you saying you should be doing this or you should be doing that when you're out on your own. So, I mean, that's for what it's worth, Daniela. That's kind of my experience. My advice would be because you can make anything work in this life. At least that's my philosophy.
yeah.
How much time it's going to take, what kind of resources you need. That's like, part of it. But if you're determined and it's something that you want to do, you can figure it out.
No, I love that. And it's so important to keep our mental health in check,
Hmm.
right? Because we're so quick to put ourselves last,
Mm,
especially if you have a family and
very
you're in
true.
this position, right? You're doing everything for everybody else and you're being super hard on yourself to have these expectations of yourself. So that be kind to yourself, I think, is
Mhm.
a wonderful statement and super huge
Thank
because we don't pay enough attention to our mental health. And if your mental health is gone, you're of no value to anyone,
That's
right?
right.
It's the planes crashing, put on your mask first,
Yes.
so you can help everybody else. And if you don't have your mask on, guess what? You can't help yourself or anybody else.
Mhm.
So I love that. Le- so you spoke about other businesses that you're in, right? So
Mhm.
how'd you get from this corporate entrepreneurial marketing, $500 a month, doing this, right, by the skin of my teeth and
Yep.
then just, that crawl, walk, run. How do you now what other businesses are you doing, and how did you pivot into that?
Mhm. Yeah. So I was part of this networking. Let me back up a little bit. Running the agency has been amazing. We work with so many interesting clients across so many different industries that it really kind of opened my eyes to how people make money, different types of businesses, thinking more strategically about what do I want to create in my life. Uh,
Mm,
some of the CEOs of these companies we run are just incredibly educated, experienced individuals who are also diversified. They're not just running this company. They're investing their time over here or their money over there. And I think for me, having that exposure really started to change my philosophy a little bit about, what was possible and what it takes to be an investor. So, for example, one of the projects I'm involved with is actually movie production. So, I'm an executive producer on a movie, and that seems kind of outside my sweet spot. But I happen to be networking with someone, and they were asked to be part of this movie production. And one thing led to another. And out of curiosity, I said, is that something that I could be involved in? And, fast forward, I got the opportunity to invest in this movie and be part of the production. So that only happened because I was able to create space for it to happen, right?
Right.
Oftentimes we're so focused on getting our work done and just working all day, every day. The problem with that is you don't create space to think, plan, and ultimately get exposure to these other things. So what
Right.
I did was once I got the agency up and running, and we're probably in our seventh year now. Um, I've built an amazing team, people who I rely on day to day to really run the day to day operations and do some of the heavy lifting. And that's created space for me in my schedule to do some of these other things. So if there's a, 3-day workshop on, because I also invest in real estate, like if there's a 3-day workshop on, I don't know, how to increase your occupancy rates. I don't know, I'm making it up, right? And it's something that I resonate with. I'm going to go to that 3-day thing because I can, because
Right.
I had an intention of getting my 40-hour work week condensed into 25 hours. Now, does
Right.
that mean I'm not creating the value I'd create in 40 hours? Actually, quite the opposite. I would argue that within 20 hours a week, I'm probably producing 60 or 80 hours of value. Why? Because I made that a goal and an intention, and I learned how to do that. And by doing that, by creating that time compression, it creates freedom during the week for me to look at these other investments and get involved. And if I have to be on a production call, I'm getting on that production call because I have the time for it.
Right.
So I feel that being able to get there is first deciding that you want to be there. Like, do you want to build other things into your schedule and your day to day that you are curious about or that you feel might be fulfilling? And if so, then how can you get there? Because a lot of people are probably watching this and thinking, well, I have to commute to the city every day. I've got a long commute. It's 40-hour, 50-hour. At the time when I was in corporate, I was working 60 hours a week. How can you do that? Well, when I did the crawl, walk, run, you know what? On my lunch hour, I would make a call or I would do some work online or the weekends or the evenings. Again, in the beginning, I put in that additional work so that ultimately over time, I could take that core job and replace it with something that was more flexible, which for me was becoming an entrepreneur, building a business, and so on. And, again, that's just one example. But what I find is when you put yourself out there, when you create that space, other opportunities just show up for you.
Yeah.
And it's always kind of worked that way for me.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's a lot of networking and relationship building, right? I'd
Hmm.
love to talk to you about again in that entrepreneurial headspace because I work with a lot of founders and CEOs
Hmm.
who find it very difficult to not necessarily hire operational people to help them move their business along, but
Uh-huh.
to actually enable them to do their job,
Uh-huh.
right? And that creating that separation.
Yeah.
So it is how did you get to a point, right? So here you are with your $500 a month, one client, and
Uh-huh.
you grow it and you grow it and you have a way that you do things and you have expectations of how the work is going to be done and delivered. And so now in order for you to continue to grow, you have to hire people. And
Mhm.
how do you separate? How do you cut the cord, right? And
Yeah.
allow yourself to find that time? Because
Yeah.
it's one thing to put in a process to intentionally allow you to have this time, but it's another thing to actually execute on getting that done. So how do you do that cord cutting, that execution to allow you to have the trust in others to run that business the way you would want, right?
Mhm. This is such a good topic because, in fact, I've recently had this conversation. And I like to think of it as gradual release. So you mentioned cord cutting, right? Which to me is at some point you got to just fully let go. And I, when I worked in education publishing for a while. We had a lot of people who did professional development. They'd go into schools, they would train teachers, and they never just taught something and said, here you go. They
Right.
used this strategy of gradual release, which is I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to show you, then we're going to do it together, then you're going to practice it. And at some point, you're going to feel comfortable enough on your own that I'm going to let you do it, right? Fully in front of a classroom. And that strategy of gradual release is essentially how I do things.
Mm,
So when it came to letting go, um, one of my early hires was someone who basically was going to replace me, let's say, in an account management role. Because you got to remember, in the beginning, I was everything. I was the CEO, I was
right.
HR,
Right.
IT, and the account manager,
Right.
and the contractor
Yeah.
delivering the work.
Right.
So I started to kind of replace the delivery piece of it so that I could focus more strategically on how do I get more business and how do we create more value for these clients and so on and so forth. And I'll be honest, it took me a long time to unlearn that habit because to me it's a habit. You got to control everything. Nobody can do it as well as you.
Mm,
And the seminal moment for me was when I was having a conversation with a good friend and business partner, and he said, "Okay, well, if you hire someone, can they do it as well as you can?" I said, "Absolutely not." This is what I thought at the time. Well, can they do it 75% as well as you can? I'm like, I don't know. He said, "How about 50%?" I said, "Yeah, they could do it half as good as I can do it." He said, "Great, hire two people."
mm,
And it hit me in that moment that at some point it has to be done. And not everyone's going to do it the way you do it. And in fact, sometimes they'll do it better, right?
right.
Especially if you're hiring the right people. And when you're growing your own business, you definitely have to balance like, hey, I really don't have the money to hire someone. So there's certain things I have to continue to do myself, so on and so forth. But, I think you get to a certain point in your growth trajectory where you have no choice. Like, you talk about cutting the cord, like you have no choice. Bill Gates is not fixing issues with Microsoft software. Like he's not on
Right.
the phone with customers.
Right.
The business couldn't exist that way. So I think it is ultimately saying, yeah, ultimately I want to get to that point where I've got somebody running the day to day and, here's the role that I want to play. Maybe it's a sales and marketing role. Maybe it's an absentee role. Maybe you just want to own the business as an investment. So depending on where you want to get to, I think there are definitely some logical steps to get there, but it really depends on what your comfort level is. So some people are comfortable hiring somebody and forgetting about it. Others, I think, might be more comfortable with this gradual release where they're starting to hand over a few things, making sure it's being done the way that they hope it would be done, creating that alignment, filling in the gaps. We have that oftentimes. We bring people into the organization and they're like 80% competent. All right, well, what's the 20% that's missing? And how do we close that gap? Is it training,
Right.
development? Is it one-on-one sessions with other members of the team? So there's always room for improvement, Daniela. But
Right.
to the question, how do you get there? I think all entrepreneurs struggle with that. They call it entrepreneurial syndrome or founder syndrome. That's what
Founder
they call that.
syndrome. Right. Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah, it's a very real thing. It's not
Yeah.
easy to overcome, but I think what people will find is if they do invest their time and energy in building up the team, gaining confidence, training, making sure people will deliver it, at least directionally, how you would
Right.
deliver it. It's very freeing and it
Right.
allows for actually accelerated growth because now you're not in the weeds. Now you're not laying awake at night worrying that so and so's website security isn't up to date. And instead, you're thinking about how can I create more value? How can I get on top of emerging technologies? How can I better leverage AI to better serve clients and their needs? And that's a very different headspace that
Right.
you need space for.
Right. Right. It is, and right, because it's a different processing
Mhm,
than task
mhm.
oriented, that visionary strategic movement. Um, and I love the 80% piece because, and I have this question that I have this conversation a lot as well. You kind of want to hire somebody who's 80%. Because if you hire somebody that's 100%, they're going to get bored very easily, which means they're not going to provide you as much value as you think,
Hmm.
and they're going to leave. So to replace them is going to cost you more money. If you hire the 80% person and allow them the space to grow with you, with the organization, you get more longevity, you get more value, you get more passion most of the time,
I
right?
agree.
So I have this conversation a lot with people, looking for a job and trying to match their resume to job descriptions, and it doesn't match 100%. And,
Mhm.
if you 100% match for the job, there is no growth. Is that really the right job, right?
Mhm.
You should be
Mhm.
in that. And I think that what's happening in today's job market and in the world today is everybody's looking for that 100% right fit person.
Mhm.
And I love that you said that 80% and get them there, because nobody's going to be 100% clone of you. And
Right.
I would say that if we could clone you, and you would find fault in that clone, because it could always be better. It could
That's
always be different, right? If we have enough time to think about how to improve on something that we do every day, it could always be improved, right? So we could always pick on something and say be better. But I love that. And that was part of your crawl, walk, run, I assume, right?
right.
The find a piece and hire the account manager or
Mhm.
hire the IT person, whatever the hot piece is in your space,
Mhm.
and kind of like just chip it off, right?
Yeah, and I also think too, Daniela, there are many, and you were talking about this with, a lot of people kind of leaving the traditional workforce. There are more freelancers, more contractors, more consultants, more coaches than ever before.
Right,
So trying to find someone, we just actually had a position here at the agency. We posted, I think within 8 minutes, we had 50 resumes come in and we had to shut it off. Like the availability of talent, I think, is better than ever,
right,
especially what I would call the mature employee. There are people out there, and we've talked about this, right, in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are either being forced out of a job or lose their job, who have decades of experience, and companies are passing them over. I
yeah,
want all those people
yeah,
because
yeah,
you can't replace that experience.
that's right,
And it creates better outcomes. They're typically, and I'm speaking generality here, but they're more informed. They're willing to learn. They're curious. That they are comprised of the qualities that we need, at least in the marketing space, where things are changing so rapidly.
right,
And, I'll be honest, there used to be this model, like, especially on the agency side, you just want them young and cheap, right? We'll sell a big deal, doesn't matter who the brand is, and we're going to find these account managers in
right,
their 20 somethings and they're just going to deliver. But it was a churn and burn strategy because the employees weren't fulfilled because they realized that they were just kind of being used to fill a seat, and the clients weren't getting the value of years of experience to say, do this, don't do that. Right. Or if we're going to do this, here's the best way to do it so that you don't burn through budget and not get the results that you were hoping for. And I just think it's a better model.
yeah. I agree, and I think that I, that is a very good point, right? For all of these businesses that are in the space, in that growth phase of where you are right now,
Uh-huh.
I think it's a tremendous opportunity to get their hands on some really great talent
Uh-huh.
that they may have not otherwise had access to, right?
Absolutely.
Because those people would have stayed in those corporate roles until they retired. And so
Mhm.
you don't have, so for you guys in this space, entrepreneurs, it is a blessing that there are all of these people available out there,
Uh-huh.
right? And look at it that way, as how can they help contribute to the growth trajectory of this business, right? They
Mhm.
can make an impact and bring some ideas from past experience. And it just doesn't mean, no, it didn't work then, it won't work now. No, it didn't work then, but this was the vision. And
Hmm.
it certainly can work now because these are the things that we're missing, right? Let's it's shifting the narrative, right? Take these people and not only their experience,
Hmm.
but most importantly, all of the lessons that they have learned.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Look at people that you're going to employ and look at their background and stop just focusing on what experience they had in delivering.
Hmm.
When I interview people and I talk about filling seats, I want to know, where did you fail? What lessons did you learn? What did you learn from that? It's great that you delivered all of these things. These things are successes. That's fantastic. It gives me an idea for who you are. But I really want to know, what did you learn from the failures that
Hmm.
propelled you to do these things that delivered, right? If we don't, because I believe if we don't focus on those things, that is the value in the experience, right?
Hmm.
And as an
Absolutely.
entrepreneur, you know that, right?
Yeah.
You took your lessons and you pivot fast, and it's okay, right? Be kind
Hmm.
to yourself. It's okay. Take that hard hit, pivot fast, and move on. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right?
Mhm. And those experiences to me are expensive. So if I can um, kind of use financial rules and say, look, if I can uh, uh, pay down my risk by hiring someone who's had all those experiences, I'm just getting 10x on my investment.
Right.
An example that I would use is a number of years ago. This is probably 5 years ago at this point. We had a web. So, in addition to doing SEO and paid search and email marketing and everything else, we do website development. So, we build websites and quite a few actually. And we had an issue with one of our e commerce stores that got hacked, and because of that hack, our client lost a bunch of money. At the end of the day, they were made whole. It all worked out. But admitting that mistake, we were able to say, okay, what could we have done differently? How could we have prevented this from happening? What do we need to do differently in the future? And because of that, which happened some time ago, every website we built after that had, I mean, you can just imagine almost too much security, right? Requiring all these additional requirements just to log in. But we haven't been hacked. The incident never so on and so forth, right?
Right.
It was that we paid for that experience. Now, if someone else was able to come to me with that experience, why wouldn't I want that? Why wouldn't I want to learn about it? Here, to your point, asking very specifically, what failures have you had? What have you learned from those failures? And what are you doing differently because of them? And we need more of that. I feel like oftentimes, right, we're trying to be on our best behavior, especially when we're doing an interview or working with a corporation, trying to get a job. You don't want to show that weakness. But to me,
Right.
it's strength. It's the
Yeah.
ability to be objective and to look at what are some things that went well, what are some things that didn't go so well, and more importantly, what did you learn from that?
Right. I mean, we're all human and no one's perfect, right? So it's
Hmm.
about celebrating the imperfections and finding how those imperfections make each individual great.
Hmm.
It's just the way it is. Well, thank you so much. This has been such an incredible conversation. We could go on for hours and hours down this space. I am so excited for you and what you have going on. What are you able to share any information with us about this movie that you're producing?
I can share a little bit of information. So it's a really interesting production. We have some people in the film who you'll actually recognize when it comes out. We're looking for a release probably the summer of this year.
Awesome.
I found out it's a really interesting process. So a lot of people are like, well, why aren't you promoting the film? Why isn't it out there? So in order to get licensing on different streaming services, there are requirements. So, for example, if you want to be on Netflix, Netflix might say, before we buy you, maybe A, we need an exclusive, and B, you need to submit at these different festivals. And then
Mm.
once that's done, we'll consider you for purchase. So we're very much in that process right now. And I'm learning a lot about the movie business. I actually had a little cameo in the film, which was fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, so myself and some of the other investors were there for a couple of days on shoot, which it's just a whole different universe. But it's really exciting. It's fun, and it's one of those projects that I'm just grateful to be a part of.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, as soon as you can share, please share with me and I will share with our audience because
I
I'm
love
sure
it.
they will all be curious. So thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to connecting with you again in the future and checking back in to see what's happening, what's moving and shaking. Uh, Thank you so much. It's been an honor to have you on today.
Daniela, thank you. And thanks for all you do for your listeners, and really appreciate the time we had together.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today at the Give Back Lab. I'm Daniela, and I will see you next time. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us today in the Give Back Lab. If today's conversation moved you, challenged you, or made you just feel seen, share it forward. That's how change begins. Until next time, keep showing up, keep speaking truth, and giving back in your own way. The lab is always open.